At first, it was just little things. Things I could easily brush off if I really tried. Emily and I had always had this amazing connection. She used to greet me at the door with that smile, the one that made my whole day, no matter how bad it was. But recently, it was different. There was this distance, this invisible wall between us that I couldn't ignore. She still smiled, but it wasn't the same. It felt forced, like she was just going through the motions. Sometimes I'd catch her eyes wandering when I was talking to her, like her mind was a million miles away. She wasn't really there anymore. And then there was the phone. It sounds stupid, I know, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It used to be that Emily would leave her phone lying around, totally unbothered. But now, she was glued to it. All the time, she never let it out of her sight, not even when we were sitting at the dinner table. Her eyes would flick to it every few seconds, like she couldn't help herself. One evening, I caught a glimpse of her screen lighting up with a message. It wasn't from a friend. It was just a first name, a man's name. My heart sank, but before I could even say anything, she was quick to cover the screen. "It's just work stuff," she said, laughing it off like it was nothing. But I felt it, this sudden chill running through me. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it wasn't just the message. It was the way she acted, the way she kept hiding things, the way she brushed off my concerns. Then came the late nights. Every night, she seemed to have something else going on. She'd text me, "I'm staying late for a meeting or drinks with the girls." Always something that came up at the last minute. I tried to trust her. I really did. But each excuse felt like another little piece of the puzzle, another thread that didn't quite fit. I thought maybe I was overthinking it. But then one night, I decided to stay up and wait for her. Normally, she'd be home by 10, maybe 11 at the latest. But tonight, midnight passed. Then 1 a.m. That's when the doubts started to claw at me. I could feel the walls closing in, the silence in the house growing louder with each passing minute. Where was she? I wanted to trust her, but every instinct inside me was screaming that something was wrong. And deep down I knew. I had to find out the truth. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of our home. The space next to me was empty, cold. Emily had texted me hours ago. "Don't wait up. Late night at the office. Love you. Love you." The words felt hollow now, like something she said out of habit rather than meaning it. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But my gut wouldn't let me. Something was wrong. I could feel it in the way she touched me, less often, less passionately. In the way she kissed me, quick, distant, like I was a stranger she had to keep up appearances with. And then there were the lies. I wasn't stupid. No one has this many last-minute meetings. No one suddenly changes their entire routine overnight. I had asked, and she had lied to my face. That was the moment I knew. I couldn't sit in the dark any longer. I had to see for myself. I spent the next few days thinking about it. I knew it was wrong, spying on my own wife. It felt disgusting. But at the same time, what choice did I have? If I confronted her, she would just deny. She was already good at it. Too good. I needed proof. So, one night when she was out again, I made my decision. I ordered a hidden camera online. Small. Nearly invisible. Just a tiny black lens disguised as a charger. Something no one would ever notice. When it arrived, I sat in the living room, just staring at it. I felt like my hands were shaking even as I opened the package. Was I really going to do this? Then I thought about all the nights I had laid awake, wondering where she was. About the way she flinched when I reached for her phone. About the messages that came late at night, always from the same unknown name. And I knew. I had to. The moment she left that evening, I sprang into action. I moved quickly, heart pounding, sweat forming at the back of my neck. I kept listening for her car, terrified that she'd forgotten something and would walk in to find me setting up a camera in our own bedroom. Our bedroom. That was what stung the most. I shouldn't have had to do this. This was supposed to be a place of trust, of love. But now, it was a crime scene, and I was the detective searching for the clues I didn't want to find. I placed the camera near the nightstand, angled perfectly to capture the entire room. Then I hesitated. This was it. Once I did this, there was no going back. I swallowed hard, forced myself to press the button. A tiny red light blinked once. Recording. I stared at it, feeling a sick twist in my stomach. Guilt clawed at me. Was I invading her privacy? Or was she the one who had already violated the sacred space we had built together? I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the silent camera. It was too late to turn back now. Now I just had to wait. And whatever happened next, I had to be ready. The first night, I could barely sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, counting the minutes until morning. Every sound in the house made me flinch. The hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the floorboards, everything felt amplified like the walls were closing in on me. When Emily finally came home, I pretended to be asleep. I heard the rustling of her clothes as she undressed, the soft padding of her feet on the carpet. She climbed into bed beside me, sighing heavily, as if she had had an exhausting day. I wanted to turn over, to look her in the eyes and ask her where she had really been, but instead, I just lay there, my heart pounding. The next morning, the first thing I did was check the footage. My hands were trembling as I pulled up the file on my laptop, half expecting to see something that would tear my world apart. But there was nothing. The video played, and all I saw was Emily. Alone. She entered the bedroom, took off her jacket, went into the bathroom to change, and then got into bed. I watched it 3 times, my pulse slowly returning to normal. No one else came into the room. No sados, no extraños movements. Just her. Maybe I was wrong. The second night I checked again, and again there was nothing. Emily came home late, yes, but she did exactly what she always did. She changed into her pajamas, scrolled through her phone for a while, and then went to sleep. I let the footage play in the background as I stared at my hands, wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. Was I really so paranoid that I had secretly recorded my own wife for no reason? I felt ashamed. The third night, the routine was the same. I sat in my office, the glow of the laptop screen flickering against my face, watching another night of perfectly normal behavior. She came in, took off her heels, stretched her arms with a tired sigh, and collapsed onto the bed. Normal. Completely normal. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my hands over my face. What was I doing? Was I really losing my mind over nothing? I had convinced myself that something terrible was happening, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was just insecure, seeing problems where there weren't any. I started to feel guilty for doubting her. Maybe she really was just busy with work. Maybe I had let my own fears consume me. And then, on the 4th night, something changed. At first, everything seemed normal again. Emily came home, got ready for bed, and lay down. But then, right before the footage ended, I noticed something. A tiny detail. Something I had missed before. She reached under her pillow, pulled out her phone, and sent a message. Not unusual, right? Except she smiled. Not just a normal smile. A soft, secretive smile. A smile I hadn't seen on her face in months. My stomach twisted. Something was going on, and I had a feeling this was just the beginning. I jolted awake in the middle of the night, my heart hammering against my ribs. The clock on my nightstand glowed 3 a.m. in the darkness. I didn't know what had woken me. Maybe a sound. Maybe just my restless mind refusing to let me sleep. But the moment my eyes opened, a single thought burned through me. Check the footage. I had done it every night for the past 3 days, watched Emily's every movement, analyzed every second of video, only to find nothing. Each time, I had felt a little more foolish, a little more ashamed. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But tonight, something was different. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, careful not to disturb Emily, though she lay motionless, lost in sleep. My hands felt cold as I reached for my laptop. I hesitated for just a moment. If I was wrong again, if I was just letting my insecurities get the best of me, I would turn this camera off tomorrow. Delete everything. Move on. But if I was right, I took a deep breath and clicked play. The video loaded and I fast-forwarded through the footage, scanning every frame for something, anything, that might explain why my gut wouldn't let this go. For the first half of the night, everything looked normal. Emily walked into the bedroom at 11:30 p.m., looking tired, her movements sluggish. She took off her earrings, set them on the nightstand, then slipped out of her dress. I watched as she went into the bathroom to change into her pajamas, brushed her hair absent-mindedly, and climbed into bed. I let out a slow exhale. Maybe this really was all in my head. Then, just as I was about to close the laptop, something flickered on the screen. A shadow. A cold shiver ran down my spine. It was 11:45 p.m. Emily was already in bed. But in the dim light of the bedroom, right at the edge of the doorway, something moved. Someone moved. I froze. I hit pause, then rewind. Played it again, frame by frame. And there it was, a figure standing in the doorway, watching. My pulse roared in my ears. It wasn't Emily. She was curled up under the covers, facing away from the door. She had no idea. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Who the hell was that? I leaned in closer, my eyes glued to the screen, my breathing slow and shallow. The figure was tall, broad-shouldered. A man. But his face, I couldn't see his face. The room was dark, but the glow from the city lights outside illuminated his silhouette. He was just standing there, motionless, staring at my wife. I felt sick. Then after what felt like an eternity, he moved, not towards Emily, not towards the bed. He turned and walked away. I slammed the laptop shut, my hand shaking. My whole body felt like it was buzzing, my skin too tight, my breath too fast. There was a man in my house, and Emily never even knew he was there. I sat frozen, my fingers still gripping the edges of my laptop, my breath trapped somewhere between my lungs and my throat. The shadow in the doorway, the slow, deliberate movements, the fact that Emily had no idea he had been standing there, watching her sleep. Or did she? A sickening thought clawed its way into my mind, cold and suffocating. What if she wasn't asleep? What if she was waiting? I swallowed hard and forced myself to open the laptop again, even though every instinct in my body screamed at me to stop, to turn it off, to pretend I never saw anything at all. But I couldn't. With shaking hands, I clicked back on the footage, rewound to 11:45 p.m., and let it play again. The shadow at the door, the stillness, the slow, silent steps, and then movement. This time, I didn't let fear blur my vision. I kept my eyes locked on the screen as the figure stepped fully into the room. My blood turned to ice. He wasn't sneaking. He wasn't creeping through the darkness like some intruder afraid of being caught. He walked in like he belonged there, like this was his home, like this wasn't the first time. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I watched him move toward the bed, toward my wife. Emily stirred slightly, shifting under the covers. And then, as if sensing his presence, she turned over. Her eyes opened. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't startled. She smiled. I felt my stomach drop. It was a smile I hadn't seen in months. Soft, warm, the kind of smile that used to be mine. And then she reached out for him. I stopped breathing. Emily sat up, her hair cascading over her shoulders, the sheets slipping down her body. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. He leaned in, and she kissed him. Not just any kiss. Not a nervous, guilty, fleeting kiss that someone might give in a moment of weakness. It was slow, intimate, the kind of kiss that tells 1,000 unspoken stories. The kind of kiss that said, "This isn't new." I felt like I had been punched in the gut, like the air had been ripped from my lungs. I wanted to look away. I couldn't. I watched as his hands moved over her body, as hers gripped his face, pulling him closer. I watched as she whispered something against his lips, something I would never hear but could imagine all too well. I watched as the woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted, gave herself to another man in the bed we had once shared. My vision blurred, a deep, burning rage rising in my chest, mixing with something worse, heartbreak. I had been right. All along, I had been right. But the truth didn't bring relief. It brought hell. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I sat there, frozen, my hands gripping the laptop so tightly that my knuckles turned white. My entire world, everything I thought I knew, was unraveling right in front of me, playing out on a screen like some sick, twisted nightmare. Emily was still kissing him, her body pressed against his like he was the love of her life. Like I had never even existed. My stomach churned, my pulse pounding so loudly in my ears that I could barely think. But then he moved. The man pulled back, his hand brushing through her hair, his lips curling into a smile. And then, finally, he turned toward the camera. My entire body went ice cold. No, no, this wasn't happening. I had prepared myself, at least as much as anyone could, for the idea that my wife was cheating. Somewhere deep down, I had already suspected it. But this was something else entirely. The man standing in my bedroom, in my home, with my wife in his arms, wasn't a stranger. It was him, my best friend, the same best friend who had stood beside me at my wedding, smiling as I said my vows. The same best friend who had lifted a glass at our reception, making a toast about how lucky I was to have found someone like Emily. The same best friend who had been there for me through everything, or so I thought. And now he was here, in my house, touching my wife, kissing her, holding her like she belonged to him. I felt like my chest was collapsing in on itself. I couldn't process it. I couldn't accept it. My hands trembled violently as I pressed pause on the footage, my mind spiraling into chaos. I replayed it, needing to be sure, needing to prove myself wrong. Maybe it was the lighting. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no matter how many times I watched, the face staring back at me was always the same. It was him. My breath came in short, shallow gasps. My body refused to function. I had trusted him. I had loved him like a brother. And all this time, he had been stabbing me in the back. Bile rose in my throat. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a calculated, intimate, deeply personal kind of destruction. And suddenly I knew. This wasn't just an affair. It was something much, much worse. I stared at the screen, my entire body locked in place. I wanted to shut it off, to stop watching, to erase what I had just seen from my mind. But I couldn't. Some sick part of me needed to know everything. I let the footage play. Emily was still there, curled up next to him, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing circles on his arm. She looked content, relaxed, like she had no fear, no guilt, no shame. Like this was just another night for them. And that's when I realized, this wasn't the first time. This wasn't some impulsive mistake, some moment of weakness that she would later regret. This was a routine. They had done this before. I watched as they exchanged looks, those silent, knowing glances that only two people who truly understand each other can share. The kind of looks Emily used to give me when we were first in love, when we had our own secret world no one else could touch. But now, that world belonged to them. I felt sick. She nudged him playfully, whispering something into his ear. He laughed, a deep, familiar laugh that made my blood boil. How many times had I heard that same laugh? At our dinners, at our weekend getaways, at the bar when the three of us hung out, when I thought I was with my best friend and my wife, two of the people I trusted most. How long had I been the punchline to a joke I didn't even know existed? I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms, so hard they left marks. It wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just sex. She was in love with him. And the worst part? She had been for a long time. I kept watching, unable to stop myself, even though every second felt like another knife twisting in my gut. The way they touched so effortlessly, like second nature. The way she leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder as if it belonged there. The way he pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to the top of her head like he had done it 100 times before. Because he had. This was their routine, their stolen moments, their inside jokes, their quiet, whispered words, meant only for each other. I had never stood a chance, had I? Emily didn't just betray me. She replaced me. My hands were shaking so violently that I almost dropped the laptop. My vision blurred with a red-hot rage that made my entire body tremble, my pulse hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. I had felt heartbreak before. I had experienced betrayal in small ways throughout my life. But this was something deeper, darker, more visceral. It was a slow-burning fire, spreading through my veins, consuming every ounce of love I had ever felt for her, for both of them. I clenched my jaw so tightly it hurt. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the laptop, my breath coming in sharp, shallow bursts. I wanted to scream. I wanted to storm into the bedroom, rip the covers off of her, and demand to know how long she had been making a fool of me. I wanted to call my so-called best friend, hear the panic in his voice when he realized I knew. I wanted to watch their smug, self-satisfied world crumble the way mine had just shattered into pieces. But I didn't. Not yet. Because they thought they were smart. They thought I was blind. Stupid. That I would never notice. That they could keep sneaking around behind my back, whispering their pathetic little secrets, laughing at me like I was some clueless idiot who would never figure it out. They had no idea that I had seen everything. No idea that I was already planning my next move. My fingers moved instinctively, cold and precise, as I copied the footage. One copy wasn't enough. No, I needed insurance. I transferred the files onto an external hard drive, then another, then a USB. Then I uploaded it to the cloud to multiple accounts, ensuring that no matter what happened, no matter what they tried to do, the truth would not disappear. I wasn't just going to confront them. I was going to destroy them. But I had to be careful. I had to be patient. I had to make them think everything was normal. I closed the laptop, exhaling shakily as I forced myself to regain control. Not yet. I couldn't let them see the rage boiling just beneath the surface. Not yet. I stood up, rolling my shoulders, cracking my knuckles, forcing myself to breathe. They had played their little game behind my back. Now, it was my turn. I woke up the next morning with a plan. A plan so clear in my mind, so sharp and cold, that for the first time in days I felt like I had control again. The rage from the night before was still there, burning deep in my chest, but I had forced it down, buried it beneath a mask of calm, calculated patience. I wasn't going to lash out like some jealous fool. I wasn't going to scream or beg or let them see the storm that was brewing inside me. No, I was going to make them pay. Emily stirred beside me, stretching lazily, her body warm under the sheets. She turned to me, her lips curling into a sleepy smile, the same lips that had kissed him just hours ago. "Morning, baby," she murmured, pressing a soft kiss against my cheek. It took everything in me not to flinch. I forced a smile, pretended. "Morning." My voice was steady, normal, like nothing had changed, like I wasn't replaying the footage of her betrayal over and over in my head. I kissed her on the forehead, just like I always did. She had no idea. She got up, moving around the bedroom, humming softly to herself, oblivious. I watched her pull on her clothes, check her phone, probably texting him. I felt my jaw clench, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I got up, got dressed, and went through the same routine as always. Breakfast, small talk, a quick, distracted kiss goodbye at the door. Then I left, just like I did every other morning. But today, something was different. Today, I knew. I drove with my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. I wasn't even sure where I was going. I just needed to clear my head, go over my plan again. Then, just as I was about to set things in motion, my phone buzzed. A message. An unknown number. I frowned, glancing down at the screen. I know what you saw, but there's more to the story. Meet me tonight. My stomach dropped. I read the message again. And again. What the hell? Who else knew? My pulse spiked, my breath coming faster as I tried to make sense of it. The camera was hidden. No one should have known I saw anything. Emily didn't know. My so-called best friend didn't know. So, who the hell was texting me? And what the hell did they mean? There's more to the story. I felt a fresh wave of unease creep up my spine. Was this someone trying to help me? Or was it someone trying to warn me? One thing was certain. This wasn't just an affair anymore. This was something much bigger. I spent the entire day replaying that message in my head, over and over again, my mind racing with possibilities. I know what you saw, but there's more to the story. Meet me tonight. I had thought I knew the worst of it. I had thought nothing could break me more than seeing my wife in our bed with my best friend. But this message, it made me doubt everything. Who else was involved? What the hell was going on? The hours dragged by, each one heavier than the last. I barely tasted my lunch. My hands felt restless, my fingers twitching every time my phone buzzed, half expecting another cryptic message. But nothing else came. Just that one chilling text waiting like a loaded gun in my inbox. By the time night fell, I was ready for war. I drove to the meeting spot, an old diner just outside of town, the kind of place that smelled like burnt coffee and grease. I parked near the back, my fingers gripping the steering wheel, my pulse hammering in my ears. I had no idea who I was meeting, and I had no idea what they were about to tell me. I stepped inside, the neon lights buzzing faintly overhead. The place was almost empty, except for a single figure sitting in the farthest booth, her fingers tapping anxiously on the table. I stopped dead in my tracks. Emily's sister. My chest tightened. I hadn't even considered her. Not once. She looked up, locking eyes with me, and in that second, I knew she knew everything. I slid into the booth across from her, my mouth dry, my mind spinning. What the hell is going on? My voice was low, steady, but inside I was barely holding it together. She exhaled shakily, running a hand through her hair. She looked nervous, scared. I didn't know if I should tell you, she admitted. But after what I found out, I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. A sinking feeling settled in my gut. Tell me what? She hesitated, biting her lip before finally whispering. Emily and him, they weren't just having an affair. I felt my entire body tense. I know, I muttered bitterly. She shook her head, leaning in closer. No, you don't. She slid something across the table, a folded piece of paper, old and worn. I unfolded it with stiff fingers, scanning the words. And then, my heart stopped. It wasn't a love letter. It wasn't some cheap motel receipt proving their affair. It was a life insurance policy. My life insurance policy. $1 million payout. Signed by me. With Emily as the sole beneficiary. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My breath hitched, my fingers tightening around the paper. They weren't just cheating on you, her sister whispered, her voice barely audible over the buzzing lights. They were planning to get rid of you. The room tilted slightly. They wanted me dead. The words tasted foreign in my mouth, unreal, impossible. But deep down, I knew it was true. The secret meetings, the stolen glances, the whispered words. It had never just been about love. It had been about murder. My wife, my best friend, They had been planning my death, and I had just caught them before it was too late. The camera footage was just the beginning. Now, it wasn't just about betrayal. It was about survival.